Well, I realize we are in this remarkably unique situation where everybody is at home, kind of, wanting something to do. And everybody knows that Fridays at 5 o'clock is John Cullen's Las Vegas Investigation, the sponsor-exclusive show that has now morphed into John Cullen's coronavirus investigation. However, I am sorry to report that John Cullen is unexpectedly not available. I'm not sure what's going on. I was in communication with John earlier today when I was in Queens. I think a lot of people saw that video where I went to the Elmhurst Hospital Center and we were investigating this story that came out in the New York Times yesterday about Dr. Colleen Smith. She had put out a story talking about what she described as apocalyptic conditions over there. As I said, I was communicating with John then. He sent me a bunch of material for today's show, but he hasn't responded to text or other messages since then. So we're going to wait a few minutes here to see if he comes in on Skype. Who knows? Perhaps an internet outage at his location. Obviously, we won't be doing the sponsor-exclusive portion of the show if John doesn't join me. We'll just have to reschedule it for another time. But what we could do is, we'll spend a few minutes here. We can kind of turn this into an ask me anything kind of thing. Got the comments up here. Jerry, I'm feeling all right. I have to say, a little bit run down. I've been all over the place, and I'm having a problem with one of my teeth that is causing a great deal of discomfort, and unfortunately, it's unclear if or when I'm going to be able to get a dentist to address it. So, we've got all these sort of minor inconveniences that are growing and building and turning into bigger problems than they might otherwise be. So I don't want to really vamp for too long without presenting people with information. But in general, the way that I run the show is that it's not about me collecting information from other people and then delivering it as if I'm some, know-it-all genius researcher or journalist. I'm interviewing people who bring their information to us. So without John, I can't do this show. And that, of course, is the reason why it is worthwhile to subscribe to the Patreon and Subscribestar channels of all my co-hosts. There will not be a sponsor-exclusive episode of John Cullen today if John doesn't join us. Exactly. Danielle Hamilton, a coconut oil pull. I did do that last night. It is the worst time to have a toothache. SRS4859. It's really, coconut oil. A lot of people are talking about coconut oil. I've used clove oil on it, which was pretty good, but that was causing some weirdness. And, okay, here's John calling, but I can't take a call while I'm live on air. Just get on. Let's see here. This is awkward. Sorry, everybody. Let's see if we can get John in here and have the show. That would be ideal. I'm not sure what he was calling to tell me, but I don't want to stop this. And thank you, 121 Jones. Which tooth? It's all the way in the back. The rearmost. Wild oregano oil. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that. I had clove oil here, exactly, Rise Above. I was thinking about that scene with Tom Hanks in Castaway where he uses an ice skate to bash out his tooth. Quite a good, and peroxide. I did that too, Jen. Last night I gargled with hydrogen peroxide, and then I did the coconut oil, and that helped a lot. Raw garlic. That's not a bad idea. Coconut oil did work really well. I don't know, John's not responding to text, and he's not available on Skype. But I don't want to take a phone call from him live where he's going to tell me something that might surprise us. I hope he's okay. That was a call from his phone. Let's assume there's got to be some kind of a technical problem here on John's end. Oragel, I'm not so interested in, Red Fox, because Listerine, all these are products that I don't really use. I moved away from those chemical including products several years ago, and bad news if it gets infected. Exactly. I know. It would be a root canal in that case, and that's what I'm worried about, is that something simple like this should be easy to take care of if there's a dentist around, but the dentists are considered non-essential. Well, I don't know if we're going to get John. I guess he was calling me to tell me something's wrong. All right. Well, I think people who are already sponsors on Patreon and Subscribestar. Wait a minute. There was just a message on Skype. Let's see what it says. Okay. Here he comes. Okay. We're live, John. You good?
And I'm here.
Okay, great.
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful to have you.
Sorry about the screw up.
No problem. No problem. Let me just get you full screen here. I've just been prepping everyone who's watching for the show that we're about to do. We're going to be going live on Subscribestar and Patreon in just about 25 minutes. So what have you got for us tonight, John? You've got this Dunning, what's the effect?
The Dunning Kruger Effect.
Yes.
Can you hear me up? Can you hear the audio okay? I'm a little...
yeah, we're going to get it dialed in. The Dunning Kruger Effect, I looked it up when you sent that to me, but...
Check.
Not
testing now. That's a little better, right?
Sounds good.
Okay. So the Dunning Kruger Effect, Dunning-Kruger, two psychologists that did some studies, and the essence of their studies, or the sort of the net is that sometimes you run into people who will argue with you about something, even though they've done no research. And when you run across these people, sometimes you can be taken aback. And I run into it rather frequently with the research I've done. People arguing the point when they're staring at the evidence right in front of their faces. And I think that maybe this Dunning-Kruger effect is something that maybe Nikolai Copernicus might have experienced. You still there with me, Jason?
Yeah. Yes, I am absolutely here. Can you hear me?
All right. So So Nikolai Copernicus, right? If we check history, he was the guy who said, "Wait a second, maybe the sun is not revolving around the Earth," based on his observations and based on mathematical calculations. And at that time, everybody thought that the sun was revolving around the Earth, right? And Nikolai Copernicus did the math. He did the work. And he said, no. Now, what's interesting about Copernicus is his theories, he was trying to prove that the Earth was at the center of the universe and everything was revolving around the Earth. That wasn't true, but he was more right than what everybody else was at the time. And him trying to convince the rest of the world that, in fact, the sun was not revolving around the Earth and that the Earth was revolving around the sun, at the time, everybody argued with the guy. But he did the math, right? And so this is this effect, this Kruger-Dunning effect. And what's interesting is that you sort of see people in two different categories that will argue the point. One are just people that are just kind of dumb, and that they're just out of their league. And this is somebody who thinks they might be able to beat a chess master if they play really fast or something. It's like, in fact, the Dunning-Kruger effect came from a guy who robbed a bank and rubbed lemon juice all over himself. And thought because lemon juice was used, and thought that because lemon juice is used as invisible ink, it would render him invisible to the cameras. And people were just like, are you really that stupid? And so these guys did research on it. It's called the Dunning Kruger Effect. And the net of it is there's people who just think they're really smart, but then there's also your sociopaths. And you don't necessarily have to be a sociopath, but you may suffer a type of bias. Yeah, that's a great example. So you may suffer from a type of bias where you believe that because you've been successful in the past and you've made good decisions in the past, and because you tend to be one of the smartest kids in your class or something like that, that you're right about everything. And here's a perfect example. So this is an X-ray. And it would be like people arguing with a radiologist about what is the determination from this X-ray. And actually, listening to somebody argue with the radiologist over it, as if they knew what they were looking at.
Right.
Right. So this is an avulsion fracture of the lateral mass of C1, right?
Don't even know what that means.
You might tell somebody, so you might tell somebody that diagnosis, and then to hear them start to argue with the radiologist and say, get the hell out of here. That's not what that is. Right. And that's the Dunning Kruger effect. Right. That's where people who don't do the work, think that they actually deserve a seat at the table. Right. Everybody deserves an opinion. Not everybody deserves the microphone.
Exactly. Well, I think it happens in all areas, and we're seeing a lot. I've been watching a lot of these, coronavirus videos. We've got Anderson Cooper interviewing Bill Gates, right? Obviously, he's got the Gates Foundation. He's doling out money to scientists to develop vaccines. Mm-hmm. But Bill Gates is not a scientist. I mean, if you want to hear about how to make a crappy operating system, even after 10 iterations and billions of dollars, or how to make a ton of money by stealing products from other people, Bill Gates would be your go-to guy. I saw people were, on CNN, they were talking about Mark Cuban's prediction for coronavirus. Yes. So I don't know if Mark Cuban is psychic. Yeah. If I was interested in like the NBA or how to finance an internet company or how to get an investment from a super billionaire, I would be interested in what Mark Cuban has to say. But as far as coronavirus goes, how does Mark Cuban know anything about it? And why is he asked?
Well, what's interesting is everybody seems to have fallen for the same illusion. And there's a few that haven't. And quite frankly, I got to tip my hat to Paul Joseph Watson. Paul Joseph Watson was on top of this very early on. I don't know if he actually showed the types of figures and the data that I'm going to share with everybody tonight. So a couple things about the patron-only show tonight. Mm-hmm. The deck that I've prepared. I don't know if you're able to switch over to that other deck I sent you with the bazillion slides in it. If you can switch over to that.
We got this one.
Yeah, this is just an example.
This is the one?
So this is a reference document. So this is not the mega one that we're going to go through tonight, but this is important. This came from the World Health Organization on March 19th. So a lot of the documents and the sources that I'm using, I'm getting them either from the CDC or from the WHO. And the reason that I talk about the Dunning Kruger effect and people arguing with me has to do with the map, right? Now, the other thing is that some people were commenting on the show.
The Johns Hopkins map, you mean?
The red. Yeah. So people were commenting last week also saying, what's with the guy with the hat and the sunglasses, and what's that whole thing, and the creepy dude thing. So I'm not sure if every week we have to explain why I'm trying to protect my identity. But 2.5 years ago, I published a hypothesis that named names of people that may have been behind the shooting in Saudi Arabia and those people have a background of killing people for a
The
profession.
shooting in Las Vegas, you mean? The Saudi Arabians behind the shooting in Las Vegas.
Yes, I'm sorry. What did I say? Did I say something stupid?
You said the shooting
Did I
in
not
Saudi
say Vegas?
Arabia.
Oh, I'm sorry. In Las
I
Vegas.
knew
I'm
what you
sorry.
meant. I knew what you meant. Don't worry
Thank you.
about it. That's
Thank
why
you.
I'm here.
All right, all right. So when that whole thing came across, I had sort of this strange combination of backgrounds in photography and magic and stuff like that, using Google Earth to just allow me to kind of piece that thing together. When it comes to this, I have an unfair advantage here, right? And we talked about this last week. 32 years ago, I set this system up. Right, so this system is using software from a company called ESRI in Redlands, California. And the data that's behind all of this is in an Oracle database. I was the guy at Oracle that went out to this company and put the two together 32 years ago. So when this all happened, and I see all this information in front of me, I'm like, again, this is my system. And you can't screw with me and fool me with my system. That's not going to happen. I know what I'm looking at, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to share with everybody tonight what the illusion has been. And it's something called forced perspective. And those of you who have taken a forced perspective photograph may not even know that that's what it's called. Forced perspective is when I take something and I ask you, is this ball bigger than this ball that's over here? So I've got a little ball sitting here, and I got another ball here. Now, which is the bigger ball?
You got balls, John.
If I put this exactly. So that's forced perspective. And forced perspective is something that you can do in photography. You can do it in art. You can do it in math, but you can also do it in computing, and you can do it in reporting. And what you guys are seeing in this this dashboard from Johns Hopkins is effectively the data computing equivalent of forced perspective. And now, what do I mean by that?
Yeah.
Well, what I mean by that is there's a couple of techniques that are being used here to make it appear that things are far worse than they actually are. And what we're going to look at tonight when we go to our patron only hour are some screens. And I think there's one more PDF I sent you. That was the big one. It was about 50 megabytes. And if you pop that, all right, so pop that one open. We can go through just a couple, 3, 4,
Well, we
5
don't have
screens.
time to do that,
There's
unfortunately, John, because we're almost out of time on our YouTube preview here, but we can get in depth on these slides when we get to the sponsor exclusive portion on patreon.com/IamJohnCullen and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We're both on Subscribestar as well, so people who don't want to use Patreon can go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen. I do want to share with everyone, just for a moment, this video of Bill Gates and his coronavirus prediction. It's all about predictions. Let's watch this for a second.
Or say, let's get back online faster. Say, well, look, in some states there's less than 200 cases. In many states there's less than 200 cases right now. You're saying even in those states, the same kind of shutdown needs to occur?
Well, let's say you have 100 cases, and let's say you don't do a shutdown, then it grows 33% per day.
Well,
so you take
how much,
100,
Bill Gates? How much, Bill Gates? How much does it grow per day? 33%? People who watch the show know what I'm talking about. We'll be back in just a little while. I mean, I didn't tell Bill Gates to say that, but he thinks it's grown 33%. I'm not a numerologist. I'm not into gematria. I do believe there is steganography at play. Coded messages being sent through normal channels like CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post. People who watch the show know what I'm talking about. John, we'll get in depth on the Dunning, I can't remember the name of it, Kruger effect.
Well, Dunning
and all
Kruger.
those details.
But make sure you have that other document that I sent you, though, because I sent you a big document.
I got it.
Okay. I want to show people that's not it. That's the other one.
This
there
one.
you go.
Calm
Do me a favor
down
before we go to the patron. Okay. Before we go, I just want to make sure you have it. Before we go to patron only, just let's go 2-3 screens in here. You pop through 1, 2, 3, and I want people to understand what you're going to see in the patron only hour.
Okay.
I found the dashboards that nobody's been showing you. I've got the maps that you haven't seen, and that's what you're going to see tonight. Tonight, I'm going to show you the dashboards that Dr. Fauci forgot to show you. I'm going to show you the dashboards that the World Health Organization hasn't been making public, right? Again, this is my domain. This is the stuff I know. This is how I spent my career, was building these systems. So if you look at the data and you look at how we're going to look at it, show people some of the new stuff. That just give them a peek. This is stuff nobody's seen. Nobody has seen these maps. Nobody has seen this data.
Where are you getting this from?
This is what our patrons pay us for, is for me to do this research, right?
All right.
So what I'm going to show you is how bubble charts are used and how bubble charts can be manipulated and how we can use different scales and how I can use different colors to denote different things, right? And so we're going to look at the data. We're going to look at how the data is being portrayed. We're going to look at reports from the CDC and the World Health Organization. We're going to look at various different mapping systems to understand what is geographic information systems, what are geographic information systems, how do they work, and how can we use this information to really get to the bottom of what is going on here? What is this? Is this really a global pandemic, or is this something else? And if it's something else, why are we being told that this is a global pandemic of epic proportion if in fact it's not? And how would you determine, is it or isn't it? Based on what? What is your litmus test for a global pandemic of epic proportion? And tonight the audience is going to get to see dashboards and maps no one has seen. Guarantee it. Guarantee it.
Amazing. Well done, John.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to be back in just about 8 minutes on patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com for both of those. We can't do this show without your support. There are no corporate sponsors. There's nobody having any economic influence on the reporting on Crowdsource the Truth. What we've done is we've created a system of micro sponsorship whereby each viewer can sponsor the show for a tiny amount of money, as little as $2 per month. You get access to a huge and growing library of sponsor-exclusive content, including tonight's episode of John Cullen's coronavirus investigation. We'll see everybody back here in just under 10 minutes. Thanks for watching, everybody.